Also joining us, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Joyce Vance. Both are MSNBC legal analysts. Good morning to you both. Andrew, I'll begin with you. Many have said that Alan Weisselberg is the tip of a much larger iceberg. If that is true, what did you learn yesterday when those indictments were unsealed? And again, what's below the surface?
Well, I think it was a correct description that this was a sweeping indictment. They talk about a 15-year scheme that began long before President Trump was the president, continued during the time he was president, and even continued after he was president. Involved numerous corporations under the Trump umbrella and numerous executives. So to me, this was a shot across the bow saying we have the goods. And this is, I think, the beginning, not the end of the Manhattan District Attorney's investigation. And so the signal to Weisselberg and others is get on board now, because we're not afraid to bring charges, and we're going to be incredibly detailed and thorough in our investigation, because, you know, what they did bring yesterday was impressive.
Joyce, do you agree that what they brought yesterday was impressive?
I agree with Andrew in that regard, and I'm struck every time I hear the former president's comments. He didn't say, you know, this is untrue, we're going to fight this. He didn't say, like you would think a business owner might, this is outrageous, I can't believe this was going on at my company. Instead, he returns to witch hunt, because what can you say when prosecutors file a highly detailed document that alleges with a lot of specific information that there was a pattern and practice across 15 years of doing all sorts of things to avoid both the payment of taxes by your employees and to permit the corporation to engage in some fraudulent conduct. This is a president who infamously, in his debate with Hillary Clinton, said he was smart because he didn't pay taxes. And we don't know yet whether this case will ultimately reach him. Right now, it's limited to the corporation that's his namesake corporation and to his CFO. But those comments in that debate may well come back to haunt him.
Andrew, let's talk a little bit about what the next act might be in this ongoing investigation. We know that first there is what was accurately described as audacious plan to just boldly, with accompanying spreadsheets, avoid taxes on a large amount of income. But what about, where are we on the hush money investigation as it relates to state charges? And then finally, how far along do you think they are on this valuation of real estate? This idea that what Trump would do with some regularity is say real estate was worth a lot more money if he was trying to get a loan, and then claim it was worth no money when he was trying to avoid taxes.
Well, in the prediction mode, I think there are sort of two comments. One, I was struck by the fact that the indictments yesterday talked repeatedly about federal tax fraud, and that this was not just a state and city tax fraud scheme. And so I think the pressure has been turned up a bit on what are the feds going to do. It would be quite an embarrassment to have New York go forward on a massive tax fraud scheme where one of the victims was the federal fisc without the federal government doing anything about that, given especially the pending issues with former President Trump and the IRS. Second, I do think that we're going to see more with respect to the bank and insurance fraud issues. I don't expect that to be, and I wouldn't hold my breath on the hush money payments. And the reason for that is that's something that really was amply investigated, and I would think that they could have gotten to the bottom of that by now. They clearly are not ready to have brought any of those charges, and this is a message to people to cooperate now. But I think there's definitely more to come on potentially both fronts.
Hey, Joyce, let's talk a little bit more about Alan Weisselberg, the CFO. He's long been billed as someone who knows where the bodies are buried, or pick your cliche of your choice. He has to this point resisted cooperating. What do you think right now his situation is? What is his legal peril? What could he face if convicted? And what's your sense for someone like this? What are the chances that he indeed would eventually decide to flip and testify against more people with the Trump organization, which of course could include the former president himself or his adult sons who were running the business while he was in office?
Sure, it's clear that Alan Weisselberg is a witness that you want to have. You always want to have the CFO testifying in a case that's like this. And so prosecutors took a run at him before they brought this indictment. He undoubtedly knew what the allegations were, what the challenges were that would face him as he moved forward, and decided, at least for the moment, to stay firmly on the side of the former president. The New York sentencing regime here probably leads to sentences that are in modest single-digit numbers. But Weisselberg is in his 70s. It's a difficult time in life for anyone to go to prison, even for a relatively short amount of time. Up until now, that apparently didn't sway him, but something that we can take away from the Michael Cohen prosecution is that as the months continue, and it's a matter of months before a case like this goes to trial, legal fees will mount. Weisselberg will face the option of repaying his taxes that he has failed to pay at some point in the future, perhaps an option, perhaps a command. And so the financial pressure as it mounts, along with the reality that he may ultimately face some time in prison, is a sort of pressure that prosecutors will want to play out. But at this point, they clearly have to look for options for making this case go forward without Weisselberg. There are perhaps other folks in the corporate sphere that they can use, and one of the risks that he faces is that if they do hit pay dirt, because now that they've brought charges, it may actually shake loose some other people who've been hesitant to cooperate, or people that they aren't even aware that are out there with relevant information. And so every day that Weisselberg doesn't get on board makes the danger he ultimately faces much greater.
We are about to see the lengths of Alan Weisselberg's loyalty to President Trump. Andrew Weissman, Joyce Vance, thank you both for helping us dig through this story. We appreciate it. One of the largest bases